Welcome, everybody. So here we are. That was quite an emotionally stirring film, and I'm so happy that that film exists. Okay, so at this part of the afternoon, we've been planning this for such a long time, like a year, I think. We've been trying to make this happen. So, again, want to just give thanks for the Kixie Dennison Fieldman Fund that made this possible. Carrie Baker, who's the chair of the program in the back, and Lisa Armstrong, who's the other senior faculty member in our program, and all of the students who are here today. Thank you for being here. And it's wonderful to have you both here together on this stage to talk about the work you do. So, in the film today, we were able to witness so many of your accomplishments, the strength of your family, the impact of your activism in this nation and internationally, the power that you gather together to organize and mobilize a movement to sustain a family and to lead others when you're tired and when other people are scared or when other people are uncertain. And the work that you do shows us that change is possible right now. We don't have to wait for it. And so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Yesterday, Dean was here and gave a talk, a talk that really sort of captures something that we don't often talk about publicly, whether we're in the movement or we are academics, about how we sustain ourselves individually, how we show up in the world, and what is expected of us to leave outside of every place, And I'm looking so forward to having a conversation with you both about the work that you do. So I'll just begin by asking a question about how has your work together brought you together? What work have you done together, collaboratively, or just how do your worlds connect?
Okay, connect. Let me see. Well, hello, everybody. I gotta remind myself y'all are here because I can't see on this side. Okay. Anyway, God, I guess it's been a thing of it was a personal experience first for us, and then it led into other cooperations and things going on. Because one of the things about any type of activism is that you need to realize that you're not alone, you have to work with somebody else, and you have to incorporate other people and other agencies that are not necessarily of your particular ilk, And so a lot of folks in this time really don't think that trans women and trans men get along. They always create a friction, you know what I mean? Forgetting that, it's a coin, and on one side there's one thing, and on the other side there's another. So in doing that, one of the things that I feel that we've managed to do is to get people to realize and see that, in order to unite us and who we are. So I don't think that there was a moment of, we just clicked. It's always been.
Yeah, and I'm remembering,
Yes.
I'm remembering, and some other people in this room were there too, like one of the first sustained collaborations we had was working on Transforming Justice, which was a gathering of centering formerly incarcerated trans imprisoned people in 2007 that took place in San Francisco. There was years of organizing leading up to it. And some of the reasons we were doing that were that some of the, we were working in organizations that centered those people and cared most about those people, but a lot of organizations nationally were starting to maybe do something about trans people, but weren't caring about the people we thought were most vulnerable. And then there was a few cases coming out of some of the big gay organizations that hadn't really been good on trans stuff about prison stuff, and we were very worried that they were going to do that in a way that wasn't aligned with the values of anti-prison activists. So we were trying to bring together leadership around what that conversation should look like, and that it was a really important gathering in part because of the work that TGIJP did, creating Marvelous Mondays, which was like a structure where every Monday people could get together, and there was food, and there was organizing. So there's this whole local organizing component, and then there was people from all over the country who came. You know, some of them like individual, formerly imprisoned trans activists who just were working, you know, on their own, supporting people, not with any organization or really marginalized in their community. So it was just like a really beautiful gathering. And then we had a lot of follow-up gatherings to that. We went had that time in Decatur.
Yeah,
remember that? We had a lot of it. We've done a lot of these attempts to try to bring people together, because people always say what they want most is just to actually be together and form that shared thinking and have those relationships.
And what you all need to understand is, in the work that you're doing and in trying to be an activist person, you need to consider the people that you're trying to help and not put your ideas or your impressions or what you think they need on them. One of the things that to keep in mind is, if you're working with people, you have to work with the people who are the most oppressed. You know, you have to deal with and help the needs of those folks. So if you're going to them and they tell you that they need sweaters, you don't drive up there with a car full of fucking shoes. Oh, I have shoes. Well, I need a fucking sweater. Yeah, well, we got shoes. Well, then take the goddamn shoes back, bring me a truck that's got sweaters on them, and give the people what they need. So in the work that you're doing, you have to pay attention to what people want. Not what your perception is of what they want, but what they actually tell you. And you have to ask them. They're not going to expect you to read their mind and know, oh, I've touched the crystal ball. They need sandwiches. You know, ask. And when you get the answer, give it to them.
You know, both of you, Dean, in your recent work, and then, you know, what we saw in the film today, there's a relationship between activism, love, and resistance. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that works for you. What's the relationship between the work that you do, the trans activism, love, and resistance?
Well, you know, the thing for me is that as a trans person, period, male or female, the first person that we wind up having the hardest time with is ourselves, simply because we don't know what it is we're feeling. We don't know why we're feeling it. You don't know where the hell it came from. And then you have been taught, instructed, taught, and given and around people that are going, no, 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 that's not what you should be doing. No, you can't feel that. Well, I'm sorry, you're sticking with a pen and it hurts. I can feel that. You know, and so in being a trans person, it's not like we are sitting at 4 and 5 years old going, God, it's a Monday. Tuesday, I'm going to be a woman. You know, no, it's not how this shit happens. And then you're going, oh, no, I can't do this. So you put it in a box and try to hide it and don't tell anybody. It ain't going nowhere. It's going to come back, because those are things that you innately feel. They're part of who you are as a human being. And in regard to this, what winds up happening for me on a personal level is, I want to make sure that any younger person who comes after me realizes that, first of all, they're not alone. Secondly, it's nothing wrong with the feelings that you're having. And thirdly, that things will change and grow and alter as you get older and you get more experiences. None of this shit is set in stone. You don't have these ideas like, oh, well, I can never do this. You don't know what you can do unless you try. And so the love comes in from making sure that you have somebody to talk to. When I grew up, there was no girl to talk to about what I was going through, what I was feeling, why I liked being around certain boys and doing certain things, or why I wanted to play with girls, you know. So it became a matter of how do you negotiate through this. And today, with the computer and all this other social shit that's going on, you'll have so much access to stuff that I never even thought about until I was 30 years old. So utilize that stuff. And don't just keep it to yourself. You know, help the younger people beneath you. They may have access to computers and can pull up all kind of shit online. But until you talk to a person, until you realize that this actually can happen, you're really not going to know. You know, you can read all kind of shit in a book and go to school and get a degree. That's really cute. But until you fed somebody who's hungry, till you've been with someone who needed help, till you've taken somebody that needs a shower and doesn't smell good to a place to clean up and have them get together, get them some clothes and have them come out and hug you and tell you how much they appreciate what you did. That book don't mean shit. You know, okay, it's really nice. Major, Griffin, Gracie, BA, NSW, GZ, That's really cute. They ain't got a goddamn thing to do with it. With the people who need help, with someone who needs a hug, with the person who needs $1 to get on a goddamn bus. That's the only thing that's fair in this world. What you pay to get on a bus or a subway, or what you pay a cab driver for getting you where the hell you're going. Even Uber, that's fair. Everything else is not fair. Don't expect it and don't look for it because the shit ain't out there.
I mean, I feel like in so many ways that's what your leadership in this movement is about, is like, instead of the kind of like social services model we have out there and the nonprofit model, all this stuff that's about distancing from people in need, your method has always just been like taking everyone in. And there's we all talk about how you call us. You know how to use the phone. It's like, I think Eric Stanley calls you a phone queen. And it is such a delight because nobody, you're one of the only people who just calls me sometimes just because you would like to talk. I mean, that is just like, there's a level of like relationality and like love that is just not even how activists treat each other a lot, where it's very like transactional and like, what do we have to get done? And also treating people in need that way. Like, and you're just, everything about the way you've always done it has been about like, someone can come sleep over. Yeah, someone can, I mean, it's just
family.
like,
That's what things are based on, that we are part of one another. And if you can't be there present with somebody, then what are you there for? I mean, I like this progress with all this stuff that's going on, but it's taken away our connection to other people. People can sit at home now and shop, don't go to a store and have to talk to a salesperson, or read somebody and give them hell on a computer at 2 a.m. while they're jacking off after looking at porn, and destroy somebody's life, and there's no accountability. There's no one to tell them that's the wrong thing to do, and you wouldn't want it to happen to you. So one thing's good, and it's good and bad with all of that.
One of the moments in the documentary that was so amazing and also heartbreaking was when you were talking about college and how I keep thinking about the full self that you were talking about last night, Dean. Like, you came there with your full self at that moment in time in U.S. history without even, it seemed, without even, a doubt. You're like, I'm bringing this is who I am. I'm here, and you're cute. I'll make you a sandwich. Come on over. And my question to both of you is, how do you do that? Like, how do you find the strength? Where does it come from that you, no matter where you are or who you are talking to, you are the same? I feel like in this moment in time, or just what does it mean to be human? It's hard. I think that's why people are able to be different online, because you don't have to come in with you can do it without anyone ever seeing you, right? There's less accountability, but also it's scary to be your full self in the world. I mean, it's really hard. And so my question is, how do you do that in your everyday life, in your activism, even as just someone going to college so young, How do you accomplish that?
Well, the thing for me is, at the time, I didn't know any better, and it was a matter of, it's not Chicago, so I can go there and be who I need to be for me. And at the time, especially in the 50s and shit, you could do those kind of things, you know what I mean? And the repercussions came if you did it too much in the public eye, And so, and doing that, for me, it's a matter of getting together to live to be the person that I need to be, for me. And in thinking about it, when people have asked me about this before, I always credit how I got here and can negotiate my life and be who the hell I am, irregardless of the pressures from everything else, to my parents. Because I was a preemie when I was born. The hospital, they went crazy because they were just starting to deal with incubators and pre-living. So they thought I was going to die, and I went from being held in my uncle's hand to this, And in that process, when my parents, my mother in particularly, a Leo, and I was Scorpio, fought me on every turn. As a baby, I used to like to crawl backwards, I was informed by my aunts. And my mother, to stop that, because it was crazy, meant I was a strange child, she nailed wood tracks along the baseboards of our house so that she could put me in it and make me crawl forward. And so my aunt told me that for 2 days, I just sat there facing forward and didn't budge, you know. The third day, I guess I learned what to do. I backed up the wall, fell over, and crawled backwards through the house. So after 18 years of that, fuck you, I'm going to do what I need to do. You know, so that's where it comes from, you know. And I try to give my girls the sense of whatever they feel they need to do, they can do that, you know. You want to be beautiful and get work done? Good for you, you know. But think about what that's going to mean, you know. Don't just jump off the bridge without checking for water. I've done that enough. I broke a leg, got stuck, you know. Check things out. And with the work that you all are going to be doing, you can be there to help somebody when they're getting ready to make those decisions. You know, you can discuss that with yourselves or your close friends or people who you know in your heart care about you. Because everybody that tells you they care about you does not care about you. Everybody goes, oh, I love you, I just want you to be so happy. Meanwhile, they're sharpening the knife to stab in your back as you turn around to walk away. So pay attention to your feelings. Pay attention to the things that are happening around you that make you feel good, that keep you just, that keep you stable, and you can get through this.
Well, yeah, this question and what you just said makes me think about, I've been trying to look at people who go through the world and seem kind of like shameless. Like that's what I want to, that's like what I'm working towards. Like, and I feel, you know, and especially other people who I feel make room for me to be more of my full self, who just don't seem to be held back by like what everyone's thinking about them around them. And you are one of those people who just feels, I feel, I mean, we all have shame, but I feel like you have a level of just like, I'm here, this is what it is, that is so freeing for other people around you. And I am interested, like we could all, you know, we're all doing that for people whether or not we know we are at times. And so I'm interested in those processes, like how does our being, any time we're like more ourselves or more on our purpose or more free to be weird, we're in a like collective liberatory project. And then sometimes you see that kind of in broad sets of people. Like I think you see that in disability justice movements and trans movements and movements for people who have been considered disgusting, you know, throwaway, are like, no, that very thing about us is like beautiful, sexy, you know. So I feel like that's like, I'm interested in how we do that for each other because we all have so much internalized self-policing and it's such a waste of our energy and so heartbreaking and to be able to show up and really like be with each other and like and also know that we're different and like be able to handle that and not be ashamed of that whatever difference is emerging, you know. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's so hard to do. I mean, it's both of you have been talking about something in different ways, but you know, in the documentary when you took, I don't think her name was Jenna. You took her to college. One of your daughters to college, and she thought that you were going for you, but you were really going for her, and the ability to be so happy for someone who's doing something that you weren't able to do is just like generosity of spirit and connectedness in practice. That it's like, that's hard to do as a human being, to be like, I'm happy that you have it, and I will do everything I can to make sure you have it. And I'm actually genuinely like thrilled for you that you get to do this thing that I didn't get to do. And I think that's about like being able to recognize the difference between me and you, and also the connection, you know, like how your success is our success. Like I'm here for you to succeed is something that is a challenge as a human to maintain, and you seem to do it so effortlessly. That's just who you are.
Well, you know, the reason for that is basically because, you know, people will tell you, I want for you the same things I want for me, until you have something that they don't have. It's like, oh, we're going to keep up with the Joneses. Well, fuck the Joneses. I'm not doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? We have to be settled and happy with what we got and deal with that. Because the only thing you can do in this life is deal with the cards that you get dealt. Can't change them, can't alter them, can't cheat. Life ain't going to let you do that. You know, so what you got is what you got. You know, and it's like, all of us aren't going to be pretty. All of us aren't going to be Hollywood stars. All of us aren't going to be rich as where money doesn't even matter as crossing your mind. Some of us are going to have 3 eyes. Some of us are going to limp. Some of us ain't going to be pretty. So embrace the brick, child. Just, oh girl, you got 3 eyes. Here's the extra pair of lashes, child. You know what I mean? Do things to help to make them comfortable and greet people on the space where they're at. And if someone, which people do have things that they're worried about or no one feels positive or on all the time, well, give them that extra push to feel positive. You don't have to, like when people meet me, you don't have to stand over there and shake my hand. I'm not some stranger. Hug me, touch me. I'm a person. Oh, that bitch is fucking real. No filter on that damn mouth, but that bitch is okay.
Yeah.
And you just do the things that are comfortable and special to the people that you're around. Because for me, I want everybody to realize not only are we connected to one another, but we're a part of each other. No matter, I've always tell people, no matter what you believe in, it's the Bible or this amoeba thing with science, 2 started everything. So we have to be connected. We have to be a part of one another. We have to be a sense that we're people, that we're humankind, that we're not these separate individual things, and that the things that seem to matter to politicians and the public is race, creed, color, size, age, disability. None of that stuff matters. You're breathing, then you deserve the things that make you comfortable while you're breathing. Because we all ain't going to be breathing forever. And so when someone dies or leaves this earth, yeah, cry, oh, it's really sad. But appreciate the things that were about them when they were here. Like, for years, since people noticed that they're killing trans women, there was this day of remembrance, and everybody is crying and weeping and sad and horrible. The only time that they bring it to the public attention is if the person who died is young, beautiful, and attractive, and the world is in shock. Oh, how could somebody kill someone that beautiful? Well, they killed her because she had a dick. That's why they did this. You know what I mean? Oh, they murdered this handsome man because he happened to have a vagina, which has nothing to do with who he was as a person, And now all of a sudden we have the day, Transgender Day of Visibility. I didn't wait to 77 years old to be fucking visible. I've been visible since I was born. Now, you may not have acknowledged me, and it's really cute that you want to say, well, since we care about people that died, we have to care about people that are living. Well, if you did the right thing about people that died, you would need to do something about the people that are living, because you're going to appreciate you, what you have, and live for them. So this is bullshit. This is crap that they're doing in order to keep us contained, to keep us together. Like this idiot that's running the country. He's getting rid of all the transgender shit. What does that mean? We're going away? We're going to chase us back in the closet? There's no closet to go back to. When I got out that bitch, I burnt the house down. Fuck a closet. I don't have time for a closet. They had to get this shit together. And I'm not going to let this motherfucker put my community on the endangered species list. You know what I mean? Oh, there's 300 of them left. We have to kill them. Really? No, motherfucker. We ain't going nowhere. We're going to hide the babies, and you deal with me. You know what I mean? And you all have to help us do that. Because none of us can do it alone. We have to do it together. And as simple as he is, we can't get rid of him and get that other idiot in, because that guy's a politician. This guy's just a clown. Keep the clown in for 2 more years. We've gotten through worse, and we'll get over this shit and correct the shit he done. That other boy get in there, he's going to sew it up so tight, you can't fart without changing your clothes. It's bad shit.
Do you have anything to add?
How to follow that. I will say, just related to what you were saying, I think that it is really interesting, like that, what you were talking about Major being like excited about other people having opportunities that she didn't have. Like, there is a real complicated dynamic in activist movements where sometimes we who've been down some road are like, pissed that it's not the same way it was for us for the next people. And that's been a dynamic I've seen a lot in trans communities, especially when you have like a trans activist who had to do it all by him or herself for years and years and years in some context, and then there's suddenly like more of a movement, and it can be really, that person can have a hard time letting other people in. And it's interesting just to look for that quality in any of us. Like because a lot of us have had experiences of having to be the only one in some terrible situation, the only one like us in some way, or the only one taking some position in some institution or whatever, and it does a lot of stuff to you, and it can do stuff that disconnects you from when you finally get some company. Or from letting company in. And so I think it's interesting, like, Major is a counter to that, like, not somebody who's ego attached to being the only leader or the only, like the opposite, like, how can we make more people who care about this stuff? You're always politicizing people and also helping people survive and connecting to people, even if they're different from you. I mean, like, those are qualities that I think are pretty actually hard to cultivate in the society we live in. So I think it's like, I love the movie too, because I want people to see in you the things that I most want them to copy, and that is one of them. But, I think the movie does a good job of showing like the things that are the most amazing about Major. Instead of, you could tell a story about you that'd be a lot more flat, That's something we do often to like our heroes, and I think that the movie actually shows like your real like daily practices of love and connection and cursing and like just amazing charisma. So I love that about it.
So I'll switch gears a little bit. I have struggled with this myself, and I wondered if you might have some advice about this. So when people who are interested in resistance movements but are interested in knowing more about the prison industrial complex but have a problem or don't really understand abolition, how do you explain to them what prison abolition is and how they might participate, even if they're like, well, there are some people who I think maybe I would rather be locked up than be in my society. Like there are people who are interested in reform, but there's limits to what and they can't envision abolition. What would you say to them about that?
One of the things I explain to them is, yes, prisons need to be blown up and don't exist. But there's always people who folks are going to feel need to be in prison. Murderers, rapists, child molesters and stuff. What the society has not yet learned is there are other ways to negotiate getting people to correct their behavior that don't necessarily include torture, abuse, manhandling, and the involuntary things that they have to go through within a prison system. And so in order to change it, you have to think about, well, when you change this, what do you offer in its place? It's like when you take somebody off of drugs, okay, no more heroin for you, honey. You just have to stop. Well, they're going to do something else. They're going to smoke or they're going to drink. And then cigarettes become the heroin that they don't have anymore. So if you're going to get rid of the prison system, what are you going to come up with to replace it? What are you going to do to make the people who break the laws that society has set up to do what they need to do and not what society wants them to do? And what I try to do is explaining to them is like, towns in this society is built on the prison system as it is. And there are people who will tell you, oh, well, prisons aren't doing what they were meant to do. Well, that sounds really cute, but yes, they are. Mass incarceration is exactly why they made them. They didn't have mass then because there weren't enough people around. But there were people that didn't want to do what everybody else wanted to do. And so they were made to contain, refine, and separate people from society, family, friends, deprecate and destroy their mental capabilities, their ability to function and reason as a human being, and kill their individualism. That's exactly what they're doing now. The only difference is they're doing it by the hundreds of thousands instead of one or two at a time, And so they want to build prisons that are, oh, well, this prison is going to be gender caring. Right, what are you going to do? Give tampons to everybody that walks in here that has a wiggle? No, you know what I mean? So in order to get people to understand what's going on, you have to explain to them at a level that they can understand exactly how damaging this is and how it affects their life. Like license plates, made in some prison. Some of the food you get in the store, grown on prison property. You know what I mean? And so who's making the money from this? Prisoners. And so now, states aren't the only people doing prisons now. There are private prisons made by people who want to make more money off of destroying the lives of families, of generations of people, of cultures, of races, and they don't care who it is at all. The thing is that they survive and they don't think we will. And so you all have to make sure that we all survive. It isn't just my girls. It isn't just the black community. It's all of us, you know, because the thing is, if they were to say erase and eradicate and get rid of all the black people that they feel are so annoying to have around, who in the fuck do you think they're going to go after next? You're not safe. You're white. Oh, yeah, I have white privilege. You know what you need to do with it? Put it in a box, FedEx it to your mama, because it ain't going to do you no good.
I spent a lot of time trying to teach law students about abolition, and a lot of people, it's the first time thinking about that idea. So I have this conversation a lot. I think probably the most central thing that comes up is that people believe that prisons exist to contain dangerous people, and that mythology, I think, is like the thing we have to get to the heart of. And there's a couple of ways that I usually, go through that with students. One obvious piece of it is that, as Major was saying, prisons, everything about policing in prisons is not designed to catch people for violating norms or laws. It's designed around racial and targeting poor people, targeting people with disabilities. So there's not actually a correlation between even like behavior and imprisonment, right? We know that like more white people do drugs than people of color, more people of color go to jail for it, all these things. And then the other piece of it is people always are like, what about the murderers? What about the rapists? There's all that. And I think, the first time that I ever had my mind blown about that was at a critical resistance gathering decades ago, where someone said, the prison is the rapist, the prison is the murderer. And I was like, right. Like, that was super helpful for me at that moment to understand that these are places of extreme violence instead of alternatives to violence. And then I think sort of the other piece of that is that if we really wanted to get rid of the people who are responsible for the greatest loss of life in our society, we would not find them in prisons. We would find them heading banks, heading governments, heading military battalions, heading police forces. Like, that's who's actually causing the largest loss of life, loss of years of life, whether that's through immediate murder or slow death from you live in the most polluted community, or you live in the most substandard housing, or whatever it is. And so I feel like we have to really shift around, like, this kind of spell I think we're under is like, what is dangerousness? And dangerousness in our society is still just associated with blackness. I mean, that's the fantasy of the prison. And so I think, like, for people who are encountering this idea for the first time, being like, it's totally okay to have this be a hard idea because the spell we're under is so deep. It's like, you've been imbibing it since you first were a kid, hearing stories about good guys and bad guys. I mean, the whole framing of prison society is fed to us from very early childhood, and we have to, and we're supposed to feel afraid about the idea of change. And to me, when I think about a world without prisons and borders, I think it's really important to put them together because they're both kind of the same type of technology. It's really just like, if people had what they needed, there'd be way less stress and harm, right? So right now, when people, like, if I'm getting in fights in my family and harming people, I definitely won't go to prison for it. But if I lived in a really poor neighborhood, if I was living in a highly policed neighborhood, I might, right? So there's already that. But also, the more stressed and hard my life is, the less we have people I'm getting by with, the more likely that there's also going to have to be, there might be more danger for us in all of our interactions. And mostly we hurt people we know, right? So there's like a lot of like demythologizing around this and around like the idea of stranger danger and how it's presented on TV, who's dangerous to us. But fundamentally, I think it's like, if we imagine a world in which more people have what they need, that would drastically change our social relations. And a lot of the harm we're most scared of wouldn't exist. Like, oftentimes my students are like, what about the psychopaths and sociopaths? Because they've seen these things on Law and Order. And first of all, I'm like, we want to have a disability justice analysis about like what those labels, what medical labels are. When they create labels of monsters who we can then exile, we should like question all processes like that. And then we might ask, like, if such people who have these qualities supposedly under these diagnoses exist, have they existed in every society, or are they produced by our conditions, right? And so there's just like everything that naturalizes the prison, I think we can denaturalize. And that includes having to just like not pretend we don't have fear that's been cultivated, but actually like really examine the fear that's been cultivated and try to figure out what does keep me safe. If it's not like policing and there being prisons in my state and all these things, like what makes me safe, more safe or less safe? And often what makes us more safe or less safe is things like clean water, friendship, having a backup plan if your date is hurting you, like that, what actually is likely to be dangerous, right? And for a lot of people, the most dangerous thing is the policing and prison and border enforcement systems. And those are so, I think the bottom line for me is like, if we closed it all today, we would have an overall reduction in violence. That's right, because it's only if we pretend state violence isn't violence that we think it reduces violence, right? It's a giant kidnapping and torture system, as Major was saying. So I feel like it's hard. It's a hard idea for people, but I like the fact that it has so much more popularity and is so much more widespread today than it was 20 years ago. Means like people are like letting themselves imagine otherwise a little bit and talk to each other about it, which I feel is a really, really, really big deal. And I feel like enough people are having those conversations casually that something might be unfreezing a little bit.
So more sex would make it so much better.
Yeah, more sex.
Start there.
We have a lot of activists at Smith. We have a lot of people who are interested in social justice in the Pioneer Valley and the Five College community. And their differences come up, right? And sometimes people are at different levels of knowing or understanding or coming at different angles to this conversation. And, I wonder if we could just maybe share some practical tools to have difficult conversations so that we don't throw away members of our community because we disagree, or, know how to handle if what you've said is not well received, right? Like, how do we have these conversations and keep the community together?
In having a conversation, you have to first realize that you're going to have a conversation, that it's not a debate, there isn't a right or wrong, and your opinion is not right, and fuck them because they don't know what they're talking about, ignorant motherfucker. That is not a conversation. And what you have to do is, in doing this, is respect and give people the choice that they have to form their own opinion and take their own point of view. It does not have to agree with yours. That doesn't mean that you're wrong or they're right. What it means is that there's just a difference of opinion and that everybody is entitled to have one. What you have to do is work on your skills of negotiating and explaining where your opinion came from, why you have that particular opinion, and what are the things that have happened to you before you got to this spot for this opinion to come out of your mouth now. One of the things that I think about all the time, every time I see the documentary, is I don't just see what you all see. I'm sitting back there crying about the things and the pain that I went through before that entered my mind to say it. I think about not just the few girls that died during the making of the documentary, but the girls who are going to die because some idiot is going to put his opinion on their body and then make them pay for what they're thinking. It's a matter of making sure when you're having these discussions that you realize that that's what this is. This isn't a discussion. It's not a battle that you're trying to prove who you are. It's kind of like, in my mind, in history, when people were jousting, and the black knights over here and the white knights over there, I always wondered, well, why wasn't there a green knight and a yellow knight? Why did it have to be black and white? What does everything come down to this color shit? And white people aren't, they're not white, and I'm not fucking black. You know what I mean? There are days, but it's a shadow. It's a matter of making sure when you have these conversations that you have them and they're not just physical, verbal conversations, that your mind is open, that your heart is open, that you're prepared to sit there and receive what this other person has to say genuinely, respectfully, with pre-knowledge and thought and compassion. If you don't have those things, don't have the conversation. It amazes me that people talk about, I don't want to talk about sex or drugs. Well, that's nice. Those are the two things that bring us the most amount of fucking pleasure. I'm going to talk about it. And if you give me a chance, I'm going to do it. So get over yourself, you know what I mean? So if you want to talk to me, you know what I mean? And engage. A lot of times people do work that they say they're trying to do transgender services. And they're there to fill out their resume. They're there to say, oh, well, I work with this community. Well, bitch, you wouldn't know a transgender person if she came up, lifted her skirt, and peed on your fucking shoes. Oh, crap. There's a bathroom bill. Yeah, well, I can't imagine my son being in there, and 3 women come in, done, heels, seam stockings, and stand at the urinal and pee. That's a little more shocking than, letting them just go where they need to go. And so until they start putting men and women bathrooms in these beautiful white homes, fuck you. There's one bathroom there, there's one bathroom out here. And so in negotiating that and talking with people about that, you have to offer them not just your point of view, but how you got there. Because for most people, I find we need to know cause, because we're a society of cause and effect. Like when you mentioned Law and Order, I watch Law and Order a lot because the men are usually hot. But in the justice system, I would like a program to not be Law and Order. What about justice and fair play? Why isn't there a show about that? What about not having a program where people are being beaten, handcuffed, thrown in the chairs, and then threatened? You're going to tell us what we want, or we're going to kick your ass. Well, you kicked my ass already, put me here. You know what I mean? So where's a program that explains how they got to this, And people, I've had folks think, oh, well, cops are cops. And no, they're not. They started off as people. And if you've heard of this study that Stanford did about how people get to that point of view by being prisoners and guards, and what happens when we have control over another person's life. And it's not just in the prison system. It's in your lives right now, with your children, with your friends' children, with your sisters and brothers. Oh, well, I'm the older child. So does that mean you can abuse, delegate, and tease and annoy your younger sibling? What happened to treating them fair? What happened to be honest with them? You know what I mean? And in this society, all of y'all and me too, oh, well, don't follow the crowd. Be your own person. You're under 7. Be who you need to be. We're proud of you as you are. You can tell us any fucking thing. You become 7 or 8 years old. Why aren't you following the crowd? What's your goddamn problem? Why can't you be like them? Why aren't you with the rest of us? So how do you take that and negotiate that through the rest of your life? Because by 5 years old, we have an idea in our bodies where we're headed and what we're going to do and how we're going to be, sexually, mentally. Those things are in there. And so by the time you get to this point where all the things that you've been told by people who are supposed to love you, care for you, protect you, provide for you, make you feel safe, are the very people that are damaging, destroying, hurting, maiming, and killing your mental and emotional abilities. They're crippling you for the rest of your life. And so you spend the rest of your life looking for a good psychiatrist, trying to find somebody that really loves you the way you need to be loved, which is why I love what you did yesterday. Because there's this concept of, oh, love's going to cure all. And once I have this, everything's going to be wonderful. And we're going to sit and sing Kumbaya and toast the fucking marshmallow. Well, marshmallows burn, and I don't have time for that fake love shit. If you care about me as a person, you care about me with or without teeth, with or without hair, standing, sitting, kneeling, praying, whatever, And so those concepts come into play in trying to discuss stuff with other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love all the stuff that you're bringing up too about like living in a hierarchical society and an authoritarian society and how we become very authoritarian. And I think a lot about like, you are what you practice, and you're always practicing something, that framing. And I think people on the left have always been really hard on each other and really exclusive, but in different ways, and that's been a dilemma. But I do think that right now we are practicing something in our use of social media. We're practicing branding ourselves as individuals and being right and wanting to feel right. And the way I see that playing out with us outside of the computer is I'm much more interested in showing you that I'm right and making that myself really cool than bringing you into this movement where I desperately need you. Right? And so I keep having this conversation with people where it's like, when we get really invested in finding out who's the bad one in the room, or who in this class isn't down, or like really like, let's try to get the teacher to, I don't know if this is happening in your classrooms, but I hear this a lot, and I've had in my classrooms, let's get the teacher to shut down this person. I I mean, obviously, we should always respond to harm while it's happening, absolutely. But figuring out how to facilitate that, it's like getting people to just disappear or never participate. We're gonna lose, because we all come into all these movements full of like horrible, fucked up ideas and behaviors that nobody gets, so like any of us could be excluded on that basis. So the real question is, how do I build capacity with other people to help bring someone in? And that sometimes means you hang out with somebody for years in movement before it's even the right moment to really say, the way you talk about that isn't ideal for me or hurts me. And sometimes you need to do it right away, depending on what it is, but like, how can we get more capacity to be with people who show up with something different, so that it's not just like the first time you use a word I don't like, you are dead to me, and I'm telling everybody how terrible you are to make myself look really good. There's just a lot of like drives in there, that are, I think, that we are practicing not the most reconciling ones. And I think one of the things I always ask myself is like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to look like something? Am I doing this to feel right? If I'm doing it for those reasons, it's probably not actually on my purpose of liberation for all people. And what could I do to pull someone else in? If I'm not the right person to pull you in because this is a bit much, could I get help? Like sometimes people will be like, Dean, will you help this other white person because I don't want to? And then I'm like, okay, how can I, instead of going there and showing them how terrible they are and how much better a white person I am than them, could I be like, yes, what was it like when I said and did that exact same thing? And how can I be really honest about that and say like, oh yeah, this is what it was like for me when I did and said this thing that you're doing people are having a hard time with. And it's really okay that you're starting there, but it's totally okay to move with the group and support everyone's well-being by doing this shift and having that humility. Like, you know what I mean? So it's all this work around like, yeah, just not being out to be the most right and to demonstrate this mastery of these ideas. Like none of that builds movement. It's like we need to build movements people can come into. And that means we need to have enough support around us that we can hang when somebody's also hard, and also know when we need to be like, oh, I'm not the right person to hang with this person, and that's okay. Like all of those boundaries are important, but that's different than just being like, I can't wait to tell you how terrible this other person is because it makes me look good, or let's take down this organization because like all of that those moves, they're really costing us right now.
It's so important. Both of what you're talking about has to do with being aware. Like you have to be able to first sit with yourself and understand and think about your motivations and be honest with yourself. Have like those hard conversations internally first, and then be able to do that with another human being. It's hard work. It's hard work. So I'll ask a couple more questions, then we can open up to everyone that's here. Something that you said, though, about your mission makes me want to ask you both. Like, what do you have, like, what is your mission and sort of what is your vision for the world? Like, imagining what is not here yet, but what is possible. What is that? And how do you hold on to that when things get really hard?
Don't look at me, shit. Okay, as an older person, don't get happy. It's a thing of, I never expected when all of this started in my life that it would get to where it is now. One of my joys come in when we had the conference in San Francisco. And I asked one of the girls how her flight was coming to San Francisco for this conference. And she said it was fine and they didn't have a problem at the airport. And at the time, there were direct flights. She didn't have to go somewhere and wait an hour. But what she had said was such a blessing for me because in my time, I couldn't have gotten on an airplane in my stuff, doing my thing, you know what I mean? And she came done and comfortable in her travel outfit and stuff. And it just gave me so much joy and pleasure to realize that things have gotten to that point. And now in seeing the things that are going on, that so many young and trans people and gender non-conforming people are coming out and being visible and not hiding, feels really good. The sad thing on the other side of that damn coin is it's not where it should be. This should have been like this when I was growing up, and that's 50 fucking years ago. So why is it taking so long? Why aren't people getting it? Why aren't there more of us helping other ones of us be who we need to be? Where's the recognition to me of the shoulders that you're standing on to be here, to have it like it is now, without any recognition or concern for, well, that bitch died 50 years ago so that you could stand here and be this. Like when people ask me about Stonewall, you know, oh, aren't you happy about? No, I'm not fucking happy about Stonewall, because if that would have did and been the success that everybody's claiming it was, my community would have more control, more power, be in a better position than it is now. That there'd be a lot of trans women in classes going to school, not a lot of trans guys. In all the schools and places I've gone to, there's 10 trans men I can meet without a heartbeat in all forms of transition, and maybe one trans woman, and usually the bitch is white, and she's going to be a goddamn lawyer. You know, what about the rest of the community? You know, what about, why aren't there girls going to school, in nursing school, to be nurses, to be lawyers, to be doctors? Because there isn't an acceptance or an open thing for us as it should be. Yes, it's better, and yeah, it's good, and there could have never been anything like this when I was growing up, so it's really nice. We'll be Skippy, but Skippy's a peanut butter.
This question about purpose is interesting. I participate in these in this work that's called generative somatics, that maybe some of you are familiar with. It's like this kind of politicized healing tradition. We do these big group courses, whatever. But one part of it is that you come up with like kind of a commitment, and sometimes like so people might have like a general movement commitment or a commitment like about their personal work, and it's something you can invoke to kind of remind yourself what you're there about. And I do that a lot with a lot of different things. So like if I'm going to write and I'm feeling like, or if I'm going to give a speech and I'm like feeling all of my different stuff, right? Like I'm like, oh no, what if I'm not good at this? Or, you know, whatever, all of the stuff that comes up when you do anything, right? So if I'm coming up with the stuff around that, I say my commitment to myself, I'm a commitment to sharing transformative ideas based in collaborative practice. I remind myself that's what that is, you know? And like I have one when I'm sitting there trying to decide, like, you know, looking at my email and there's a lot of requests to do different kinds of work, and I know that I have a tendency to take on more than I can do and keep healthy. I have a commitment, and I say I'm a commitment to rest and satisfaction. It's like, what would I say yes to if I remembered that I also believe I should get to feel satisfied, not only all the undone things, and that I'm allowed to rest. And I think it's interesting, I have a commitment, I say when I'm going to teach, like all the things that I do that are hard and that stir my shit, you know? And I think it's interesting for all of us to consider that, like, what does it mean to have a way to remind yourself, like, why you're here, especially when you go into a hard situation. Like when I go in to teach a bunch of law students, a lot of whom have very different views than I do, and it's maybe sometimes it's a hostile kind of scene depending on what we're studying and who's in the class. Like, how am I gonna like hold on to like why I'm here so that I can feel better while I'm doing it and have it not take such a toll on me, and just deliver like whatever I'm here to deliver. That I don't know how it's gonna land. You can't know. None of us can know what all the results of our efforts are. All we can do is like ground in principles that hopefully we got from our community and from like people we really trust. Think of the people who really love you, not the scary people in front of you, you know, and try to bring in like your actual purpose. And I feel like that's a lifetime of work. And I think, you know, some people, it's the same thing you do when you pray before you eat. Or when, you know, like it's like, what is it you want to bring in with each activity to make it intentional, instead of just like I'm walking around reacting and like freaking out about who likes me and who doesn't like me, and whether I'm bad and whether I'm ugly and whether, you know, like it's so easy to live that way in capitalism and to be really distracted from like ourselves and like what, you know what I mean, like an affirmative belief in how I want to be in any situation, including like a boring situation or a hard situation or a stressful situation. So I appreciate that idea, because that's something I've really been trying to work with for a while, and I notice it does make a difference. Not necessarily in what happens, but definitely in like how I experience what happened and how much it takes, you know.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so one question about people that we read and study a lot. We think about who are no longer here, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, and they were your friends, right? And I wonder, you know, we don't have them, and if there's something that you could say about them, like who were they, what were they like what is there anything you could share with us for people who that's a loss in the community, one that we didn't actually even get to experience, but people who were dear to you. Is there anything that you could share with us about them?
Oh, gosh. I think the thing to share with them is that you have to get past Stonewall. I mean, that bullshit is taken from us, whitewashed, and put on a pedestal somewhere that does not include the people who suffered and went through the pain and agony and torture for it to be put there. And the thing about Marsha and Sylvie is that their care and concern about the community was years before Stonewall even happened. When I got to New York in '62, I met them around '65 and '66, and they had a concern for their fellow sisters and the kids in the street that you have to grow into. I went there, when I moved there, it was to party and get myself together for what I had assumed was going to be transitioning to become the first black Christine Jurgensen. I was going to be this fabulous, tall black woman. Met the wrong man, turned my ass out, and fuck a transition. All of a sudden, I just wanted to do what I need to do to party, be fun, have a good time. But Marsha and Sylvia wanted to create spaces for the runaway kids to have safety, to have a shelter, to have some place to go to be clothed and housed and taken care of without being raped, molested, and tortured. Because one of the things that happens for runaways is you wind up, whether you want to or not, having survival sex because older people aren't going to do anything for you without them feeling that they're going to get something out of it. So they're either going to fuck you or you're going to fuck them. They're going to suck your dick. They're going to do whatever it is and not pay you, which would be nice, but let you sleep on their floor, have you clean their goddamn house. And so Marsha and Sylvia wanted to eradicate that. They wanted the community to go to New York, frightened and scared, running away from the trauma or the bullshit of their lives, and be safe, and be cared for, and be looked after, you know. And they helped to ingratiate me into that, you know, which took time, you know, because like you're saying, this shit don't just pop up and bingo, oh, I got it. Well, no, you don't get it right away. It takes time. And so in thinking about them, it never has anything to do with Stonewall and all that crap that went on with that. It has to do with the loss of a caring and nurturing soul, the loss of somebody who would understand who I am now and what I've gotten to and appreciate what I do and the work that I do and the people that I care about, which is all of my trans and gender nonconforming people, because we all need this. We all need to realize that we're a part of a family group called humankind. And we can love on one another and not be fearful and scared and worried and upset and anxious. You know, that you can relax and chill and feel safe and be held in somebody's arm comfortably. And if you need to cry, cry. If you need to hug them tight, hold them tight without somebody trying to play with your nipples or rub your ass or, you know. It doesn't all have to be a sexual tension as the society makes it, though. Obviously, with the thing that's going on in Hollywood, the Me Too. Well, oh yeah, Me Too, it's 2018. How long has this been going on? You know, I'm pretty sure that Cain fucked Abel before he killed him. So what the hell is this shit that they're going through? You know, this isn't new. This isn't something to go, oh my God, that's really good. Yeah, you know it's been going on, you just haven't said anything. You know, and so in thinking about them and wanting people to think about them, I would like for you to think about them before this. Think about who they were as younger queens, as young persons running around, because they were homeless and they were in the streets and having to fight to survive and sleeping in doorways because no one would let them stay with them, and what that took to be there and what has become and evolved out of that. Out of that became a system of caring. Out of that became an awareness of we have got to look out for one another. We have got to realize that without each other, none of us are going to make it. No bitch, like I say, needs to be thrown under the fucking bus. No one's life is invaluable. We are all important. We are all worthwhile. And no matter how many people I speak to, if one person gets it, God damn it, then I've done what I needed to do to take this forward. Hopefully it's more than one. And hopefully you all are going to take this, the information that is shared academically or streetwise like me, and do something positive with it. Tell somebody, share it with somebody, get somebody off their goddamn ass to do something to help another person, and that includes you.
Thank you so much for that. Both of you founded nonprofit organizations to carry on that kind of work. So, I think the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, GI, JP.
That was Alex. Mine is House of Gigi.
House of Gigi. This is new, House of Gigi.
In Little Rock.
Okay, so maybe we could I'll end by just asking you to talk a little bit about your move from San Francisco to Little Rock and what you're doing there.
Now? God, I thought tomorrow. I moved to Little Rock from San Francisco because I wanted to be someplace that would help the girls who are living in the South and suffering underneath the pressures that are going on down there. I wanted to be somewhere where I could, after moving there, find out that the South is not this horrible, nasty, crocodile-eating place where you go there and you're going to get sucked into the swamp. It's just another damn place. And, there are crazy people everywhere. Everybody in the South is not insane. And everybody in the South isn't fucking their cousins. But there are people in New York fucking their cousins. In Vermont, you know what I mean? It goes on everywhere. There's more insanity than just in the southern states. And the reason I went there was because when I went there for the documentary, it was a place that made me feel comfortable, that I didn't have to watch my back in. And being a person that's out of prison, I don't like sitting with my back toward a door. I don't like being somewhere and being in the middle of the room where someone can attack me from the back or the side and I don't see them. So there are precautions that I have taken in my life to keep myself safe. But one of the things in Little Rock was I didn't automatically do those things. I sat in the middle of a restaurant and was okay, And so in moving back there and knowing a lot of girls from the South in New York and San Francisco, my community leaves there because they're not getting services. There's no place for them to exist and be comfortable. And so they run to San Francisco and New York. Well, it's not that much safer there, but there's numbers there. So there's this guise of, there's safety in numbers, which is really cute until somebody wheels through the crowd and shoots just you, and the crowd steps back and lets them leave. So I figured by being in the South and creating House of Gigi that I can give the girls someplace to go to get referrals to stuff, to have someone understand, love, and appreciate them for who they are. One of the oddities about the South is for my trans women and is that when they leave, there's always one person within their bloodline family who doesn't understand but who keeps in touch with them, that they can call years later to wish Merry Christmas and don't get cussed out. And so I wanted to do something so that those girls wouldn't have to leave the South in that one connection. Because 9 times out of 10, blood family don't want to have shit to do with you once you tell them who you actually are. Oh, you can be yourself and you can tell us anything. Bullshit. Till we say something that doesn't agree with who you think we are because you think I'm a mini you. Well, I'm not. I'm mini major. And you are your own individual people. Well, parents don't see that until they get slapped in the face with it. And then when they do, you gotta go. So being in the South, I'm helping to create the House of Gigi, which is in honor of the houses of New York, House of the Beige, House of Crystal, of Extravaganza. And it stands for the Griffin Gracie Educational and Research Center for Trans and Gender Nonconforming People.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's open it up to people who would like to ask questions. Just raise your hand and Leah will bring you the microphone. So, you have questions? I have more on this paper, but I want to share. Okay. All right, all right.
That's a good one. Oh, well, honey, first of all, the first thing you have to do is, in order to do the work and to be an activist and to do all these wonderful things that you think that you're doing by helping these poor little children who don't know what the hell is going on, you have to take care of you first. Because if you aren't at your full capacity, you can't be of any use to anybody else. And what you have to do is pay attention to yourself and your body and listen to your inner voice, because your body isn't going to let you down. When it's getting to be too much and the stress is starting to drive you crazy, your eyebrows start twitching or something will go on to let you know, I need a fucking break. When you get that, take it. Don't tell yourself, oh, well, they can't survive without me. They're not going to make it unless I'm here. Bitch, they were surviving before you came along. Take a break, come back, they're still going to be here, and you can just step right in and continue what you're doing. Because if you don't do it, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to become tired and annoyed. You're going to become frustrated and angry with them, and they have nothing whatsoever to do with why you're feeling like that. It's on you. You know, and yes, it's hard. You know, it's hard for me too, but I just think about when it gets tired, child, I back my ass up like a car, throw my butt in reverse, go about 10 feet, hit drive, and go where I need to go. When I'm done, I come back. But if you don't take care of you, you can't do this work, because you have to be strong for the people who can't be. You have to be the voice for people who can't speak. You know, and until you take care of you, then you can take care of them. Okay? Yeah. Yep, sure, honey. And go out there and kill them, child. Just act up a storm. Let me see you on the cover of Time magazine.
I think one thing I think about this too is there's a real dilemma, because sometimes the self-care that we're sold is like, self-care is like about checking out of movement a lot of times, and a lot of times it's like consumer stuff that we're told to do for self-care. And obviously I think everyone needs to do different things, but it's like how to sort that out, because a message of self-care sometimes is a message about like only checking out. And I have actually found that I've gotten my greatest healing through connection to friendships and in movements, and so that it's not always about not going to those things and isolating from them. It's about noticing what's happening when I go, and noticing what, like, also letting movement feed me, instead of having, I think I used to have an idea that comes from living in capitalist society that work is draining and bad, and fun was like whatever it was I was really kind of like compulsively obsessed with right then, like, which might be like an escapist plot to a movie or a book, or it might be like fucking everybody or whatever it was at the time. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And I think that like that divide really disturbed me, because I was just like, oh, I have to go to another meeting. You know what I mean? I actually created an exhausting vibe around doing the political work that is actually like a great source of joy, and that I'm so honored to get to be part of. So it's been interesting for me to try to shift some of those associations and be like, what's the pleasure and joy in this meeting? Is it going to be more pleasure and joyful if the markers are prettier, or if there's really good snack? Like, how can I help cultivate this as a site of pleasure and joy, and also also have boundaries with it, but just kind of like, I think it's really what you're saying, but it took me so much longer to get there around what do things actually feel like? I mean, when the stories you told me, like the story about going to Arkansas and not feeling you had to watch your back, and that you just knew you had to be there. Like, I think, I don't know about other people, but I don't have as much capacity to feel myself as I hear in that story. That's something I have to like actively cultivate. And so I have to like remind myself to reflect and be like, what does this space feel like? What do I want it to feel like? How can I cultivate and invoke that feeling? How can I look at any fake divides I'm doing in my head and any escapist moves? You know, like, it's like I have to do a lot to really like be there, and that is a form of self-care, instead of like a checked out performance of activism and a checked out performance of friendship and a checked out performance of dating, or whatever all the things I'm doing are. I think that has been like the thing I wish I'd understood earlier, and like a lot of the stuff Major's talking about those like humanized connections with other people, instead of ones where I'm just looking for what to judge you on. Like, all that stuff like takes so much away from me when I'm doing those moves, which I've done. Like, I grew up in a shit-talking environment in South, and we only bond by talking shit, and it has such a deep cost to me and raises my shame so much. And, you know, so I think like, it's very messy what I'm talking about, but I guess my key pieces here are like, kind of interrogating what actually feeds me, and some beliefs I might be bringing into it that are actually like beliefs from the system, and making things into like work, instead of being like, how can there be a site for pleasure in all of this engagement with each other, and what would make it that way, and like being honest about that. Like, it sounds like affection is something that you're talking about, a lot of people coming and needing and wanting, and so, you know, is there a way to have more of that, or what art, or whatever it is people actually can, and then like when we create those more pleasurable spaces, the movements are much, much healthier.
You say dating?
Dating.
You didn't tell me. You didn't tell me. Okay.
Sparks are flying.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Ms. Danica. I am one of the original co-founders of the first New England Transgender Pride in New England. I'm also a very well-known activist and of the transgender community and the lesbian community here in Western Massachusetts. Have you all ever got pushback from your own community? Because as an activist and a woman of color, and as a transgender woman of color, and as a lesbian, I have got pushback from the gay community. I've got pushback from our own lesbian community and our own transgender community for trying to provide a space, an open space, and activism to create change in this community. New England is a very closed community, and it's a very, I would say it's a very, self-centered community. And there is no latitude to help each other, to give a positive voice in this community. I started the first women's march in this community long before there was even a women's march, and there was no other woman was interested. You know, so the thing is, what pushback have you ever got back in the San Francisco community? I helped co-found the first Dyke March in New York back in 1992. You know, and back then we got a lot of pushback, even from our own gay community. What advances have you all seen? What pushback you have got, and what results that you all have taken into consideration in making a more progressive community?
Damn, honey, I should have wrote that shit down. That's a lot. Okay. First of all, as far as pushback, that comes with the territory. If you're doing anything to help make things better, clearer, or more understandable, someone's going to go, I don't want to fucking hear it, get the hell away from me, and no. But if it's important and you feel that it's right, then you have to just keep going. I mean, since you're a transgender woman, have you ever gone to a transgender support group? Well, the girls that has work done don't want to talk to the girls that haven't had work done. The girls on hormones don't want to have anything to do with the girls who are not on hormones. And the girls who've gone through electrolysis and passed, I hate that word, don't want to have anything to do with girls that don't pass. And it's the thing of, oh, well, girl, I can't hang out with you because if I'm with you, they'll read me. Well, that's cute. I'm going to read you now. So if they read you, it won't matter, you know. It comes with what you're doing. You know, we're not going to start and do something as activists and have people go, oh, makes perfect sense. Well, if it made sense, then there wouldn't be a need for activists. We have to create a way. It's kind of like, think about the pioneers that came here and landed out here, and now we have California. So there weren't roads. You know, you couldn't hook your car up and drive. You know, so what did they have to do? Tear down trees, create paths, you know what I mean? And through usage, create a road. Oh, wow, look, those trees are gone, so we can go that way. That's what activism is, creating those avenues for somebody else to come along and go, oh, I can go and do that. So, no, it's not going to be easy. And yes, we're going to get resistance. I got resistance when the lady that I was seeing had my child, had my son. I got resistance when I decided that I was not going to put up with the bullshit that was going on at the time. And you're talking about 91. Honey, please. I'm talking about 67, 68. You know, you weren't even a thought in somebody's brain at that time, you know. So it's a matter of this has always been. And in going through your activism for you all too, you all need to remember that your parents were also kids at one time, were this age at one time, were doing what you all were doing. So what you're doing isn't new. It's different because you're doing it. And you have to take into consideration how you got to this point, why you're at this point, and what went on before you. So that as you're doing this, you create the space that you need in order to do the work that you need to do. And no, everybody's not going to want to do it or feel you right or hold your hand and together we'll fight, whatever have you. This ain't dodgeball. This is life. And yes, there's somebody that's going to say no to you, to your ideas and what you're trying to do. Fuck them. Do it anyway.
I want to ask one more thing. I want to say that I want to thank Ms. Major for being our Grand Marshal of the first Transgender Pride in New England, 2008.
Oh, you were there? Oh, God. You're welcome, sweetheart. Thank you. Oh, come on. You must have something to say, or I'm going to go because I'm hungry and I got to pee.
Thank you both for being here, and thank you, Professor Declue, for facilitating. On the subject of, you mentioned really quickly about like the left being hard on each other, and on the subject of like Smith and like the community here. One thing I learned recently was this concept of problematic allies, and then like in contrast to people who are actually like white supremacists who could like kill you on the street or something. And I have been thinking about that like binary and how do we learn and connect with those problematic allies. And we have learned about like calling in and like approaching somebody and being like, hey, so can we talk about this or whatever. But I'm wondering about when it's like the person who's actually calling out. So like if I'm, there's people talking and I see one person being like, but you are racist and you did it, and it's just a lot of anger, and which is I totally understand, but like doesn't do much in terms of like bringing that other person in. So I'm wondering if you have any like advice or like thoughts on how we could like work on these situations when you're like a bystander person.
I think that like probably is, like for me the number one, even when we're having this conversation about calling in and about being connective around difference, is I want to just really agree with you that like to never judge people for having strong feelings. Like that has to be first. Like whenever we receive feedback, especially when the person giving us feedback is a person who's in a more targeted position than us, particularly, right? It's just like the first thing is like not judging them on how they give the feedback. Like that is the thing we always go to. We're like, we shouldn't have said that. You should have said to me nice. All that stuff, right? So I appreciate you like naming that, like understanding that people have strong feelings. I think one thing I've seen happening, actually, I was recently talking to some students at this school that I'm in a long-term conversation with, and they were seeing both that there were people in this particular class who were like really needing to name some harmful stuff that was happening from another person, and there was a person in that class who was going on the side to work with that person on it and try to bring them in. Like that, we can do a 1-2 punch. We can do, you know, like, and because that person felt they had the capacity to spend time with that hard person, and so they decided to do it. They don't have, nobody has to do that. You know what I mean? Like that's vital. And they also shared some of the privileged positions with that person, so that it was, they were like, you know what? This is going to cost someone some time. It's going to be me this time. I'm going to take a shift trying to connect with this person so that they're not ditched because the person's stuff they were expressing that was harmful was also partly because they were having a lot of defensiveness because of who they think they are and how they want to be invested in this politics. You know, like they were someone who are currently a problematic and maybe harmful potential ally. So I think it's really situational, but I guess the bottom line of it is just like figuring out when we have the capacity to do that outreach. It's not, I don't know if it's necessarily about interrupting that moment, because that could really be silencing to, I mean, just depending on, there's like thousands of dynamics here, but like, you know, I think that this is like something when I'm having classes, I'm like, yeah, I want us to figure out how to communicate with each other around difference strategically, but there's not, like sometimes we do like, what are gonna be our group agreements? And usually a white student will try to put on the board, like, that we'll be nice to each other about our difference, and I'm like, nope. Everyone's allowed to have strong feelings here. Like, it's okay, like, you know what I mean? Because it kind of becomes this like white fragility thing, like it needs to be said to me in this perfect way or whatever. And everyone needs to think of my feelings first before they tell me how I'm hurting them. So it's just a really delicate balance, but I love this idea of calling in that people are trying to cultivate, and the question is like, yeah, how can we bring as many people in as possible and also do that reasonably, knowing that like we all have limited capacity for that, but when we have that capacity, and I think that's the thing, it's like, there are some people whose positions make it them the right people to counter-recruit people who are about to be recruited into white nationalism. Like, some people are that close to that, right? Like, I live in Washington State, and in Washington, Oregon, there's a long, long history of white nationalism and Nazi stuff. And there are people in our state strategizing, how can other white rural people help recruit white people who are in danger of being recruited? And so they're looking at what are the talking points those people use? What are the ways they do it? They base it on things that are real, like you're in economic despair, you feel like you have no political power. Those people could be recruited to the right or to the left. And we're like, we're gonna recruit them to, you know, like, so we all have, you know, who can we be of influence on? And often we don't wanna look at who we could be of influence on who's in our one-up positions, right? And that is actually like a real, especially right now when like the world is like literally crumbling and so many people are freaking out and know about it, this is a real time to recruit people to solidarity instead of to dominance. And doing that is really complicated, but we know best how to do it like where we already live, like in our communities of faith or in our racial groups or in our economic, like that's actually, we know the lingo in those places, and we're often like distancing, especially in college, we're often distancing ourselves from some of those places, which is a healthy, natural, good idea to like, whoa, like look at where we came from and critique it maybe. But I think there's something to be said for like using access and influence, just as you're describing, to like, to call in. But I wouldn't do that in the moment when someone else is giving important feedback, because it could just feel like it's allaying to the person who maybe needs to hear some, the hard feedback can also be leverage, right? Like, it's like hard, there's a rule for hard and gentle feedback in all of our relationships, I think, you know.
Well, let's have one more question, and then one final question. All right.
Hi.
Stand up tall.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. I have a question about, you both have been talking about how people aren't disposable, and like how when you were talking about Major, when you're having a conversation with someone, you're having a conversation, and you're not trying to convince them of anything, you're really listening and telling them where you got there. And I'm thinking about certain feminist movements that deny the existence of trans people, and like about those feminists that are just like so frustrating. And I'm wondering, like, because you were just talking about Dean Spade about like recruiting people into your movement, when do you decide who you're going to talk to and who you're not going to talk to? And like, if no one is disposable, how do you have those conversations with people who also aren't willing to have the discussion or have the conversation? And like, how have you encountered that in your lives, work?
For me, I'm not out recruiting anybody to join anything. And it's a matter of, in my everyday continence, I'm aware and talking with people in regards to getting them to back up off of their preconceived ideas of who and what I am, whether they know or not, in order to negotiate a sense of commitment to, well, I won't intentionally do this anymore, and if I hear somebody doing it, I will let them know that that's not the correct thing to do. One of the things that happens in a lot of lesbian and dyke kinds of things is this persecution that they have toward trans men, in regards to feeling as if they're fighting and denying their womanhood, and why couldn't they just be a lesbian, and why do they have to look so much like a man, and what do they need a beard for? the thing that they are going through, those are all personal concepts over what they think in the sense of generalizing what their lesbianism is about or what womanhood is. There isn't the understanding that you can be born with a penis and grow up to be a very lovely woman in a part of womanhood. And you can have a vagina and grow up to be an absolutely fabulous fucking man. Those are the constructs of being a human being. Your gender doesn't connotate who you're going to be as an adult person or in your growing up as a child. Their perception about that is so absurd because there was a couple of women movements in the 80s when I was working with women about that in that group that completely disacknowledged any trans woman from going or participating in their activities. They were chased away from marches. And the amazing thing was in the 70s when it started, my girls and I felt as if this included us too. If we managed to get a job, then we'd get fair pay because of our appearance, not because we can stand up and pee in a sink because we're in a hurry. You know, it becomes a matter of accepting and seeing the things as they're presented. And so in your daily conversations with people, it isn't a matter of trying to recruit somebody into my beliefs or my form of activism. It's a matter of making them aware of what the constructs are for the world and how that participation affects their relationship with me and people who might come into their lives later. And in going through that, like it took those girls in Michigan, they ousted and beat up this trans woman who had a sex change and felt as if she had a right to be there, you know. And that just wasn't enough. She told somebody that she had a sex change and they outed her and threw her out of this. You know, so it's a matter of in negotiating through the things that are going on, no matter what particular group you are with or identify you choose to be a part of, there's a commonality that needs to be taken into consideration to accept people for where they are and what their beliefs are. Because it isn't what I think about you that matters, it's what you think about you. And that I should have the sense and the ability and be adult and mature enough to accept that and deal with you on that level. No matter what I might see in my crazy head or what I'm thinking, you know. You're to be respected and appreciated for those things only, not for my preconceived ideas or what this society is saying. Oh, but that shit's not right. And well, fuck you. You don't know what the hell's going on. So.
I think for me, this really relates to like this question about power dynamics. Like the danger of us having this conversation about calling each other in is that we forget that, of course, we're supposed to apply pressure to people who are representing like institutions of, you know, hideous violence, right? Mm-hmm. And that like, you know, if we're trying to stop, as we are in Seattle, to stop the King County, you know, executive who's like the, you know, the top of the county, if we're trying to stop him from building this new youth jail, it's not about like understanding his deepest humanity, which of course is there. It's about like relentlessly harassing the shit out of him and disrupting all of his speeches and protesting at his house, and like he cannot build this jail. We're not, you know what I mean? So it's like when people are in roles where they're choosing to represent a particular politics, you know, and they're fomenting ideas that we know are harmful and murderous, like some of those faux feminist ideas, we should have, they are our campaign targets. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do we have this? Because I think the danger can be of like, it can be this danger of like, we should think of everyone as just an individual instead of as a representative of a role and a power and an ideology that they are like articulating. So I think that's why I think there's room for like really intense feedback. And there's also, you know, of course we want those people to also shift and change, but pressure is required, especially for people who are like leading harmful campaigns that we know are destroying people that it's like life and death for our communities. So yeah, I've never want to be understood in my thinking about the problems with our harshness to each other on the left, that I mean having a less militant politics, because I think we actually need to really be like severely escalating our tactics right now, not de-escalating them. And yeah, and I'm feel pretty like concerned about like any kind of talking points about like a gentleness with the leaders. No, yeah, you know what I mean.
All right, so would you like to say anything in closing? Anything say goodbye?
Date trans women. What's the name of the hotel? 271. I'm up to 2 in the morning.
That is a lovely way to end. Thank
Works
you.
for me.
Just thank you so much. We are so honored to be able to have this time with you. I know all of the students here and faculty members, community members are really, really grateful to have had this time with you. So thank you.
Thank you all for having me here. I appreciate it.